So the first thing we're going to do, using those 4-inch clamps, we're going to take our piece of oak, and this is 2x2, so it's not going to make any difference which direction it goes necessarily. And I'm going to put that piece of oak between there, and then I'm going to clamp the two ends of it. When clamping and measuring and everything, I do everything from the left. And so the first clamp is going to be on the left. The other thing is I'm going to do is make sure that this and this and this are flush. You get to the other end, that may not happen. In fact, it's not going to, right? And that doesn't make any difference. It's an aesthetic thing. Or you can wait till it's all done, and then you can take back, and for instance, I can, because I have the right type of tool for it, but I can take that and run it through the big jet, because that'll cut both metal and wood, and then I'll have a really, really nice clean cut. But for right now, I'm just focusing on working from the left side, and that's where my first clamp was. Again, my primary concern was just making sure that those tops are flush. That is going to have an effect on when you're doing your glue ups and some other stuff, and you want those to be flush. So now those are done. This will come in handy later, possibly, especially if we pull things apart. So I've got a L for left, 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 and that way we can always put it back together again if we need to. All right, so what we're going to do is those clamps are on. What's cool about these clamps is you can see they don't interfere, and that's because of the channel. They don't interfere with the table. And the only one that's going to interfere a little bit is this one on the left, because I have to put a mark at 1 inch, but I can do that later. So we'll see how that goes. But right now what I'm doing is I'm looking at this diagram, the dimensions, and I'm seeing I'm losing all the lower ones. And these are going to be for the mounting options, how we're going to mount this thing, the MikroBeamer to, again, the baker's scaffolding or to a festival table, whatever. These are all the marking ones. So I'm going to lay those out, and I do all of them. You don't have to, you can just pick the ones that you want to use, but I'm going to start off at 1 inch, then 6 3/8, then 7, etc., etc. So I have all of the mounting options marked, and now you can see why I recommended this small tape, like a 6-footer or a 9-footer. It's because you're going to have that clamp in there, and you put a big clamp, a ruler in there, like a 25, 30-footer, it's not going to fit, but this tucks in there quite nicely. So now we do want to catch all of the holes that are going to be for what I call the thru-bolts, and that's the upper set. And again, there's 1, 2, there's going to be 3 of those total. They're at 4 inch, 15, and 26. And these hole layouts, what they do is again, you notice that they're not going to collide with other things that you're doing on that same surface. But when we flip this thing 90 degrees, they're also not going to collide with some of the other stuff that we're going to be doing. And that's a critical part of it. So again, 4, 15, and 26. So now all of our holes are marked, the inside. And again, one set is for mounting options, and then the other set is for the bolt through to attach everything together here. But the drilling is all done the same way. It's going to be with a 3/8 inch bit, and they're all going to be placed in the center. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to, on this one, it's a software that I use. We're going to go to the next one, which is, it automatically pulls it up. And again, this one looks complicated, and it is if you're doing a 80 incher or a 90 incher. But again, I'm going to zoom in and find really just that portion that I need. Okay, so what I have is 2.5, 7.5, 12.5, 17.5, 22.5, 27.5, And then those, by the way, it starts off at that 2.5, and then everything after that is a 5-inch increment, and that's how this whole thing gets laid out. And again, that way nothing crosses each other, they don't collide. So I'm going to turn my piece, I'm going to go this way with it, 90 degrees. And now I'm just going to do those marks the same way that I did the ones earlier. It's not super critical. I had some older marks on there. I'm going to get rid of those. Okay, so I'm going to mark on the steel because I want to keep the wood clean. So I've got 2.5, 7.5, and 7. So all of those holes are marked. Again, they're starting off on the one end 2.5 inches in, and then on the other end they end at 2.5 inches in as well. It's just the way that I was able to lay everything out. So now all of those holes are marked, but we need another set over here, and that's where, and I'm sorry I didn't list this earlier in the video, but you're going to need a speed square or some sort of square like this. It's just going to help you. All I'm going to do is put it on that mark and then do that. Do the same thing again. Now this is an optional tool that you can use if you want to, and that is a metalworker's punch, and there's different kinds of them. And I'm not a metalworker, I just found out about these, and I do just a little bit of metalworking, right? So, but that's where you would take a hammer and you'd punch it. But where is that, you know? So that way I found out that it's easier to instead just to set up a temporary fence on the drill press, and then that way that'll automatically set my distance in from where I want it. And I'll show you how I set that up in a minute, as opposed to using a punch. Okay, so now all of the holes are marked. All the marking is done. But what I want to do is focus on a couple of holes for the first part of the drilling, because that'll allow us to bolt this together and basically get rid of the clamps. So those 3 holes that are part of the drilling, let me just dig them up on here. So those are at 4, 15, and 26 on the inside. And on the colored version of it, they're in green. So I've got a green, a green, and a green. So again, 4, 15, and 26. So that's this one right here, 4. 15 is the halfway mark on a 30-incher, right? And then the other one was 26. So those 3 holes are the ones that we're focusing on first. And I'm going to drill those, and then I can install the bolts, and that way we're going to get rid of the clamps, because otherwise the clamps are going to be in the way. So now we're done, completely done with the as I can recall, of the marking part.